Welcome, Queen. Some conversations aren't going left because you're being misunderstood. Some conversations are going to the left because someone is failing to take responsibility. Embrace yourself. Because I say this with love, but sometimes that someone is you. And I know you may say that conflict is an issue because people don't respect you, people don't listen to you, people twist your words. And here's the deal, while all of that could very well be true, there are times that no one is leading the conversation. And so it creates a lack of communication, which then causes additional frustration. And that's the hidden root that too many people often don't see. They don't see that no one is taking the lead in the conversation that they are having. So you have two people who are trying to communicate their side, their position, their perspective to the other person, and yet neither party is taking a lead, taking responsibility in the conversation. So hear me. Leadership in communication doesn't come from a title or seniority. It comes from responsibility. So I ask you, the last time you had a conversation with someone, was it clear to you who was leading the conversation? Or did it seem like the conversation was all over the place and it had no sense of direction? And here's the deal, when it comes to this hidden root that no one is leading the conversation, it's hidden because we don't recognize that that is the case. Meaning, we think we are doing a good job leading the conversation. We think we are communicating well what we need, what we want, and what we expect. But here is what I want you to consider. The next time you end a conversation, as you're ending it, ask that person, what did they hear you communicate? Why? Because when you take the time to do this, you invite that person to share with you the insights they gain from speaking to you or having you speak to them. And if that person communicates back to you something that you didn't say or something that you didn't need, or they essentially just missed the ship altogether, meaning it appears to you from what they communicated back to you that they didn't hear a word that you said, it's possible that you did not lead that conversation well. Now, while there can be issues with their understanding and interpretation, if they are not walking away clear, then clearly there is an issue there. And another way that you can tell that no one has led a conversation is if the conversation is in disarray, meaning nothing gets resolved. If at the end of your conversations, it just seemed like you had a disagreement with someone and you both walked away upset, frustrated, angry, and as though neither party had communicated anything to each other, there wasn't a real lead in the conversation. Because here's the thing about conversations. Even if you disagree with the person or people you're talking to, or they may disagree with you, or it could be one person you're talking to that disagrees with you. At the end of that conversation, even if you all don't agree, you should be able to walk away clear on what you all just communicated to each other. Anytime there is dysfunction, there is confusion, there is chaos, there are explosions, or people simply walk away abruptly as someone else is speaking, that conversation wasn't led well. And I know that we have been taught, many of us, that It's normal to yell, scream, fuss, and cuss when we're angry. But here's the deal: when we are in that state and space, it then makes conversating more challenging. And I'm not saying that you should not be upset or that you shouldn't express your anger. By all means, people have a right to know how you feel. Well, I should say you have a right to express how you feel. That's fine. That's normal. And still, I want you to recognize at the point your emotions take over what you are sharing, meaning what's coming out of your mouth, it then makes communicating with you more challenging. And often we don't see this. But again, that is another hidden root. And it's part of the bigger hidden root that the conversation is not being led well, because we see it as normal. But if we really stop and take the time to think about it, when we show up like that, it makes getting a resolution on the table a lot more challenging. And it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way when conversations are led well and with intentionality. And that brings me into other instances where we may be unawarely giving our power away, meaning failing to lead our conversations well. And I'm just going to share a few ways that that is possible and that may be happening as you are having conversations. So please recognize that this is not an exhaustive list, but I do want to share some real life examples with you so that you can take the time to assess your conversations and determine whether or not you are finding yourself engaging in this hidden root, failing to lead your conversations well, so that you can identify if any of these issues are impacting you and your ability to lead your conversations well. Giving people the silent treatment. Have you ever given someone the silent treatment and then felt as though it should be clear what the issue was and what that person needed to do to resolve it? Here's the deal. When we show up and we give people the silent treatment, that often doesn't get us the response or the solution that we would prefer. Instead, there are times, instead of giving people the silent treatment, that it would be better for us to clarify what our issue is, what the problem is, and what resolution we are desiring to have. Avoidance. Have you ever found yourself avoiding speaking to a person because you did not want to feel uncomfortable speaking to them? Here's the thing with avoidance and avoiding discomfort. You can try to avoid discomfort, but the thing is that discomfort isn't going to go anywhere. If you take that approach, then the issue that you really need to discuss with that person will never be brought to light. And then that creates internal conflict within you because there's something you really want to share with them, but you don't want to put yourself in a position of being uncomfortable with them having that discussion. And here's the thing: you're still experiencing discomfort. It's just not happening externally with them, because it's happening internally with you and within you, because now you're in conflict with yourself. So the next time you find yourself using avoidance to avoid discomfort about having a conversation, I want you to ask yourself, how long am I willing to sit in discomfort within myself? Because that's truly what you're doing to yourself. Another way we give our power away, we fail to lead conversations especially well, is when we hint at what we want or need when we hint at what we expect or is non-negotiable instead of directly saying what we intend. When you hint, people don't truly know what you intend. So instead of hinting, just share your true intentions. Because again, when we do that, we can think that someone should be clear because we gave them a hint. But telling someone your true intentions versus hinting at what your true intentions could be, they're not the same. And while we may be looking at them, they, in that instance, are not the one to blame. And then there is the, I'm just going to let them figure it out. I'm going to wait and I'm going to let them figure it out because they should know. And if they don't know, I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to tell them. But here's the thing. You're sitting there in frustration, waiting for them to figure it out. They haven't figured it out. And you just waiting. And you're getting more and more frustrated the longer you wait. Because you're thinking to yourself, how long is this going to take? And here's the deal. When we sit and we wait for someone else to figure it out, we are putting the ball in their court. We are leaving it to them to figure out where we are and what we need, what we want, what the issue is, and what they can do about it, when we could have taken the lead and gotten out of our feelings and expressed what we're feeling. So the next time you find yourself saying, I'm going to just let them figure it out. No, I'm not going to tell them nothing. I'm going to let them figure it out. I want you to ask yourself, how valuable is it to you to sit there in anger, in frustration, in sadness, in whatever feeling you may be feeling at that time? How valuable is that to you versus you taking the lead and being willing to share with this person exactly what's on your mind? And the final example that I will share with you for the time being is this. When we expect other people to have the same emotional capacity as us, especially when they never showed us that they had the same emotional capacity as us, and they never expressed that they were interested in improving the depth of their emotional capacity to be like us. That can be tough because we can feel as though if they love us, they should really be able to connect with us and understand where we are emotionally. And I have shared this example before, and I'll share it again. There is the milk carton, and then there is the gallon of milk. If that milk carton is poured, it's full now, and it's poured, all of it, into an empty gallon of milk, that empty gallon of milk is not going to be nowhere close to being filled. But you know what's going to be happening with that milk carton? It's going to be totally empty. And if we don't get this as it relates to people and understanding that some people just don't have it to give, even though they're giving their best, we can find ourselves unnecessarily stressed. And I get it. Conversations are tough. Sometimes they challenge us in ways we don't want to be challenged. And so we may want to blame, we may want to defend, we may want to deny, we may want to shift the blame, rewrite the story, refuse to own that our tone or our behavior was unacceptable or contributed to a breakdown. And we can find ourselves thinking, I just need to keep re-explaining my position and let it be known where I was coming from so that they can truly get it. even though they're still not getting it. Because we can think that their misunderstanding is the problem. And if we could only get them to see that their misunderstanding is the problem, then we can move forward. When that is not the issue. The issue is they, and sometimes you, may be avoiding responsibility. And anytime that anyone in any conversation avoids responsibility, the conversation will not progress. And if it is you in the conversation that is avoiding taking responsibility, then there will be no stabilization in the conversation. So there is a real negative cost in not leading conversations well. And that's whether you're at work, you're at home, or just in life in general. At work, you can find yourself out of alignment and unnecessarily frustrated and dealing with conflict from co-workers or even a conflict with your supervisor. At home, you can find yourself emotionally out of control and wondering why your spouse just doesn't get it. You can find yourself yelling and screaming at your kids when they haven't did anything to cause you to show up that way, but because you're overwhelmed, that overwhelm is coming out and they just so happen to be there for the fallout. And then just in life in general, you can find yourself dealing with resentment and bitterness because there are things that you need, that you are expecting, but those needs and expectations aren't expressed, so they are going unmet. And so I need you to understand that when you don't lead conversations well, then someone is going to take the lead. And very rarely do they lead in the direction that you would want them to take you. So it would be wise for you to take the lead yourself so you can get a resolution that's beneficial to you. Because when you take the lead, you take responsibility and you own your power. You own your tone and you own your timing. Because sometimes, here's the deal, breakdown happens in conversations not because of what we said. Sometimes it's the way we said it, and sometimes it was just the wrong time. You know, I was talking with my mom the other day, and she's still grieving the loss of my grandmother, which is her mother, of course. And while there are a lot of things I could say to her, I know that it's not the right time. Her heart can't handle that right now while she's grieving. And so I want you to consider your tone and the timing, because if either one of them are off, then it could throw the conversation off. And then also, when we own our power, we take responsibility and we clarify instead of assuming someone should just get it. They should just understand. They should just know. No, they shouldn't. When you take responsibility, you ensure they know by clearly clarifying what you want them to know. That's owning your power. That's taking responsibility. And also, when we own our power, we don't react. We respond and we redirect. And we do it in a calm way. And I know that can be challenging for some. I shared before, I didn't used to always communicate in a calm way, especially when I was upset. I could really yell. But again, becoming aware that it doesn't take all of that, I was able to make a shift. And sometimes we have to shift, because if we won't shift, we can't expect our situations to shift, especially for the better. And that means that sometimes we're going to have to get settled within ourselves before we go to communicate with someone else. That way we can name what it is we need. We can be specific about what it is that we need without attacking the person for not providing what we need. Because a person who feels attacked often will go into defense or they will flee. And neither of those gets you what you want from them. And that means that it's on us to show up from the very beginning with clear expectations and do so in a way that we set the standard. Because when we set the standard early, people don't feel as though we took them by surprise. Nobody likes to be taken by surprise. But often we don't do this. We show up in relationships and we kind of just go with the flow. And they going with the flow, it's cool in the beginning when you're getting to know each other. But after a while, they going with the flow. That gets to be a bit much. And so at that point, we can find ourselves frustrated that what we really want and really need, we're not getting it. And then we can find ourselves upset and frustrated with the other person when it was us from the very beginning who didn't set a clear standard. And now we're mad at a person who is actually being who they have always been, who's actually doing what they have always done, who's actually showing up and living life as they always have. So do yourself a favor and own your power, own taking responsibility, and set the standard early. And be clear about it and non-negotiable about it if it is a non-negotiable standard or expectation that you have that you need. And lastly, I will share this about taking responsibility. When you take responsibility, you are willing to rephrase and restate what you've shared. Because when you are willing to restate and rephrase what you've shared, then you take a proactive approach to avoid frustration causing an escalation in the conversation. And that's why leadership isn't loud and leadership isn't forceful. Leadership is regulated, it's self-aware, and it's responsible. And that's also why taking responsibility and leading conversations well doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means that you know how to lead conversations and you know how to lead them well. It means that you know how to show up with clarity, control, and emotionally stable. And that way, in a conversation, no matter what the other person or the other people may be expressing or sharing, you know how to show up in such a way that you take ownership and responsibility for you, and you are not manipulated, guilt tripped, or dragged from somebody else's turmoil and dysfunction. Because when you choose responsibility, that is the moment that you choose to reclaim your voice and reclaim your power. And now that we've talked about leadership and responsibility, the next thing we are going to be discussing is direction. Because leading a conversation is fine and it is a good thing to do. But once you lead it, it is critical to know where you are leading it. And that means you must be aware of the direction that you want to lead that conversation in or to. Because when you can do that, that changes everything. It changes how you communicate. It changes how your boundaries show up. It changes how your leadership shows up. And it changes how your emotional steadiness impacts the conversation through your communication. Remember, responsibility is your reset button. It's where confidence becomes clarity and where peace becomes possible. As always, I'm Coach Sam telling you that 24 hours doesn't seem long, but in 24 hours, you can change your life. So go ahead and do something life changing now.